I'd like to call the meeting to order at 7 p.m.
I just wanted to let him know why I made the changes.
Commissioner Crane is going to be absent this evening, but we still have our quorum. We'll start up with citizens communication. The Planning and Zoning Commission welcomes comment on items relevant to the Planning and Zoning Commission not already scheduled on tonight's agenda. In accordance with the Texas Attorney General's opinion, any public comment that's made on an item that is not on the published final agenda will only be heard by the Commission. No formal action, discussion, deliberation, or comment will be made by the Commission. Each person providing public comment will be limited to 5 minutes. Is there anyone wishing to address the Commission this evening? All right. Appears there are no public comments this evening. All right, we'll move on. Our first item on the agenda, the presentation. So item 3A, presentation and discussion regarding procedures for conducting a meeting. Lee Simmons, City Attorney.
Okay.
Have you on?
Evening, Commissioners. Lee Simmons, nice to be here with you. I've been asked to give a brief presentation on parliamentary procedure. I think a lot of this will be familiar to you, but it's always worth a refresher. Robert's Rules. What is it? What are they? Very brief pocket manual, so cheap that every member of a church or society could own a copy, and so arranged as to enable one quickly to find when any particular motion is made. The rules are not law unless they're codified in your code, via rules of procedure, but otherwise they're really just guidelines for how the meeting is run. It's a code of rules and ethics for working in groups, helps to govern orderly, expeditious transactions, streamline the meeting process, and really just enables assemblies with consideration for every member's opinion. Meeting basics, again, I know I'm preaching to the choir here, but obviously you need to have a quorum. You've got 2 officers, one presiding and one who takes minutes. Call to order of business, and then you have a business method. The chair's duties. We have a new chair. I'm sure this is not unfamiliar to you, but obviously the chair will call the meeting to order. You can recognize persons entitled to the floor for comments. The chair clearly states motions, so no matter who makes a motion on the dais, the chair should clearly enunciate and repeat the motion so that everybody on the dais understands what the motion is. Enforcing the rules of debate and decorum, refusing to recognize frivolous motions. I haven't seen that yet. I hope I don't. Expediting business, and just a number of other items that are, par for the course for commissions, boards, and council. When does the chair vote? Under your code, anytime. There are some rules pertaining to certain cities where the chair, particularly general law cities, where the chair does not have a vote unless he or she breaks the tie. That is not the case here.
Does that mean any question or every question? Like, are they obligated to vote on everything?
He can vote on every question. He can recuse himself. He can abstain. But generally, it's a very permissive guideline. Motions. So when a motion is made, the chair has 7 steps. Obviously, you want to ask for a second. Restate the motion. There's a call for discussion, and then there's an end of the discussion, and you take the vote. You ask for the ayes and the nays, and state whether the motion is passed or failed. Votes needed to pass certain items. Most of the time, 90% of the time, it's just going to be by a majority vote, but there are occasions where you need a 2/3 majority. Generally, that is when you prescribe the type of notice of the time and place of a public hearing. So when you want to set notice during a meeting for a future agenda item, and you want to make sure that you have the time and the place, that requires a 2/3 vote. I think that's very rare in this case, but it's worth knowing. I think the more familiar one is the supermajority, 3/4 majority vote. You're going to see that for designations of historic landmarks and districts if the owners don't consent or if there's a protest of a proposed zoning change. I've seen that quite a bit.
Are those, I'm sorry, quick question. Are those majorities of the entire body or majorities of those present?
It's the majority of the entire body. So if you have 5 people here tonight, you would still need a majority of 4 to pass an agenda item or make a recommendation in this case. We have a lot of different motions. The main motion is the one that comes up obviously 99% of the time. It just brings business before the assembly. But there are also some interesting subsidiary motions. Subsidiary motion helps to assist the assembly in considering or disposing of a main motion. That falls in the order of precedence. So you have to have a main motion before you have a subsidiary motion. Privileged motions, they don't relate to the pending business, but they do have to do with special matters of immediate and overriding importance. Without debate, they should be allowed to interrupt the consideration of anything else. It's like a subsidiary motion. These motions fit into an order of precedence as well. Incidental motions, they deal with mainly questions of procedure arising out of other motions or business. These are basically clarifying motions. There's no order of precedence, so it can be made at any time. They arise incidentally, and it's decided as it arises. So going back just real briefly to subsidiary motions, these are made in certain circumstances. If you want to postpone indefinitely a certain item, if you want to amend a motion, I've seen cases where there's a main motion that's made and then another commissioner offers to make an amending, some call it a friendly amendment to the main motion. That would be a subsidiary motion. You could postpone certain items to a certain time usually during the main meeting or the same meeting. You can make a subsidiary motion to limit or extend the limits of debate. I've seen this often where the chair, particularly with real packed commission agendas, has the discretion to limit the number of minutes people have to comment on certain items. And you can table an item for later in the commission meeting. Privileged motions, a few of those, you'll see them more often. Orders of the day basically is a demand in parliamentary law that a meeting proceed according to its order of business. Point of privilege or question of privilege. It is a point or question of personal privilege. It's a type of motion that a member might use to address any issues pertaining to their ability to carry out their duties. And then obviously recess, adjourning, and fixing a time which to adjourn. If you know you're going to have a long night and you want to stop at a certain time, you can fix that time. Incidental motions, there are so many, but they do come up on occasion. The first being a point of order. It's basically a query in a formal debate or meeting as to whether the correct procedure is being followed. You can suspend the rules. This allows the commission to set aside its normal rules to do something that it could not do otherwise. For example, there are special rules of order. There are rules contained in the parliamentary authority, so if you have rules of procedure in the code, you can certainly just refer to those. And there are rules of order that are contained in the bylaws that can be suspended as well. And on all of these incidental motions, by the way, because there's so many, I'm happy to send a bullet point list of those to the secretary to send to you all if you're interested in learning more about those. So there's an objection to a consideration. That's when a member feels that an original main motion should not be considered. Consideration seriatim, I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly, also considered by paragraph. So if you have a fairly large item caption that you have to consider, you can consider it paragraph by paragraph. So there's a main motion, but the commission is allowed to go paragraph by paragraph and agree to, on certain stipulations per paragraph. They're not separate motions. It's a discussion that allows the commission to arrive back to the main motion with agreement. These are used with particularly gnarly commission agenda items. They don't come up very often, but they do. Other incidental motions, which I'll just briefly touch, there's a division of the meeting when a member doubts the accuracy of a chair's announcement. You just bring it up for clarification, basically. There are motions related to the methods of voting. So that's when a member moves that a vote be taken differently than how you usually do that. Motions related to nominations, it just basically specifies a method by which candidates can be nominated. I think we just went through this last month. And there are general requests and inquiries. Sample agenda, again, preaching to the choir, but obviously there's the approval of the minutes. There are officer and committee reports. There's unfinished business, new business, and you all adjourn. Not every agenda is the same, but just for purposes of Robert's Rules and Parliamentary Procedure, we try to stick to this basic agenda process. At the end of the day, these are guidelines that allow you to have a policy of no surprises. You have certain time periods, you keep the meeting on schedule, you have draft language of motions already, and there's an allocation of amount of time for each agenda item. I know some items take longer than others. Again, this is just a guideline. That's what we're really trying to end at the end of the day, is that we have a real streamlined process by which you can conduct your business efficiently, allow the public to have their comment, and then adjourn hopefully at a decent hour. So that is all I have. I'm happy to take any questions. If I don't know the answer, I will definitely find the answer and get back to you.
I have a question about the moving to set to limit the time of a debate, or to set a time to adjourn and come back to things later. I assume, and I would support, that the public has the right to speak regardless, right? And we can't infringe that. Does the chair have the right to ask, if we are in a meeting that's going very late and we have 20, 30 people coming up to use their 5 minutes, to say the same thing as the people before them? Obviously, if they want to, they can exercise that right. Does the chair have the authority to request that if they don't have anything new, they consider waiving their?
Yeah, absolutely. It's still left to the discretion of the public, but and I've seen cases where the chair will say, we're going to limit comment to 2 minutes instead of 3 minutes tonight for the purposes of keeping the meeting moving on time. Of course, you all have the opportunity to ask speakers questions after their 2 minutes are up.
Mm-hmm. And does the chair, and what is the formal process for that? For the person comes up, they either finish or they run out of time. Do we wait for the chair to call us before we ask them any questions, clarifying?
Generally, it's kind of a laissez-faire thing. If you raise your hand and just say, Chair, I do have may I ask a question of the speaker, and that's how that's handled.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? Please reach out. I'm available, and like I said, I'll send you this lengthy list of incidental motions if you care to peruse that.
I would love the PowerPoint.
Okay,
Will do.
Thank you.
thanks.
I did want to mention just one more thing about the public comment and questioning. I think I fully supportive of the commission's ability to ask questions of the public when they come up. I just want to reiterate though that we would want that to be very equitable and fair and to those speaking, especially if there's maybe only a couple of people that there are questions for and not everyone, to make sure that everyone has a chance to say their piece. All right, thanks for the presentation. Moving on to item 4 on the agenda. This will be the consent agenda. All matters listed under the consent agenda are considered routine by the commission and will be acted by one motion. The items include preliminary and final plats where staff has found compliance with all minimum subdivision regulations. All items approved by consent are approved with any and all staff recommendations. There will not be separate discussion of these items. If any commissioner desires to discuss an item on the consent agenda, it will be moved to the regular agenda for further consideration. One update this evening, item 4C, which is the meeting minutes from last month, has been removed from the consent agenda to note a change from what was included from the original agenda. Are there any other items that any commissioner wishes to remove from the consent agenda this evening? All right, since there are none, I'll accept a motion and a second to approve items 4A and 4B on the consent agenda.
I so move.
I'll second.
All right, we've got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
The motion passes. All right, next item on the agenda, item 5, within our discuss and consider. Cool, so we have a subdivision waiver request, and Kristen, you have a presentation for us?
Yes. Good evening, Chair and Commission. So tonight we have the Bluffs at Blackhawk subdivision waiver. Okay. The applicant is requesting a waiver from Chapter 15.16.5G of the Unified Development Code to not provide the 20-foot landscape lot between the arterial level street and a residential lot. The Bluffs at Blackhawk is a proposed residential subdivision to be built in the city of Hutto's ETJ within Williamson County. The extension of Row Lane is required to serve this subdivision. The applicant has worked in coordination with Williamson County, Travis County, the city of Hutto, and the city of Pflugerville to design a roadway section through this area that meets Williamson County's proposed design standards, which would be 120 feet of right-of-way and no landscape lot requirement. Here on the screen we have a portion of the landscape lot of the extension through the city of Pflugerville's ETJ, and then further east we have the proposed Bluffs at Blackhawk subdivision that will be built in Hutto's ETJ. The code requirement is intended to provide a buffer between the arterial level street and a residential lot or structure that would be built closer to that extension. So the subdivision requirement, because there's conflict between Williamson County's and the city of Pflugerville's subdivision design standards, the applicant is required to seek a subdivision waiver from the city of Pflugerville. The applicant is provided a letter stating that they meet criteria 2, that the requirement does not appear to be reasonably applicable in this specific case, as the roadway is proposed to be built to Williamson County's road standards of 120 feet of right-of-way with no landscape lot. If the roadway was being built to the city of Pflugerville standards of 100 feet of right-of-way, they would be able to provide that 20-foot landscape lot in between the roadway and the residential lot to the south. So here are some pictures of what the end of Row Lane looks like. Going straight east, you'll notice on the south side of this extension there is a fence, but no residential structure immediately adjacent to this fence. Should the lots that have been platted part of Row Lane estates redevelop in the future, this landscape lot could be included at that time to provide that buffer between those redeveloped lots and this roadway extension. Since the section of roadway is proposed to be built to Williamson County standards, the requirement of the landscape lot does not appear to be reasonable applicable in this case. Staff finds that the request meets criteria 2 and therefore recommends approval of the subdivision waiver. This completes staff's presentation.
Is,
No, go for
Okay.
it. You're good.
is the staff aware of any differences? I mean, the 100 versus 120-foot right-of-way for Pflugerville versus, or is it Travis and Williamson County? Is that the difference?
So the city of Pflugerville has a master transportation plan that identifies Row Lane as a major arterial, as a minor arterial, which would be 100 feet of right of way. Whereas Williamson County doesn't differentiate between a minor or a major, and they just require 100 feet of right of way.
So if I'm understanding this correct, we're still at effectively 120 feet. It's just that Pflugerville would typically do 100 feet plus 20 feet of landscaping, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious about the differences between the two codes, because I would just want to make sure that there wasn't something where the median or some other part of the roadway was bigger in the Williamson County, which would then push the roadways out further so that the distance between the edge of the roadway and the residential lot might get squeezed if we take out the 20-foot buffer, if that makes sense.
I think so. So Williamson County does have larger travel lanes, which accounts for the more right of way that is needed.
Okay. Yeah, because at least me personally, man, I feel like the 20-foot buffer lot is a good idea. So if by giving this waiver, we would be encroaching on that to some degree, it'd be difficult for me to see the justification for it, I guess.
So yeah, I have similar questions. Reading this last week, I was confused. So his question plus, will you help me understand? So the applicant seeking the waiver is the applicant building the road,
Correct.
correct? So they're not seeking to put in any residential structures on the Pflugerville ETJ portion of the road.
Correct. We do have the applicant here
Okay.
if you would like to ask them, but from what they have shown in the preliminary plan, it's just the extension of the roadway through this area.
And so the waiver request is because they don't have the property that, like, it abuts to property they don't own, so they can't make any statement per their letter. They can't make any promises about land they don't own, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So if we were to move to approve, could we add a modifier saying that this will apply to any future, to the waiver is for the road only, and that future residential structures will still need to provide that 20-foot buffer when developing this currently vacant land?
So the property to the south that this would be abutting is currently platted as part of the Row Lane Estates. So the whole lot is not vacant. It currently has
Okay.
a single family structure on it. It's pushed up against another roadway further south.
And is that owner, the homeowner here?
No.
Did they have any comment? Like, did they, or are they gonna have their 20 feet? And if not, did they have anything to say about it?
No, so staff, this doesn't require public notice to the homeowners that it abuts. So public notice was not sent to them.
So
Okay.
that, let me draft on that for a second. So I believe that means, so that area has already been platted. And does that plat include Pflugerville's normal right-of-way and setback then?
At the time that it was platted, it met code requirements and state and local requirements.
But this waiver would not change that property, or it does?
No, it would not change that property.
And north of here is not in Pflugerville's. Oh, no, it is.
Yeah.
It's still Pflugerville
What
ETJ.
she was indicating was that if the property to the south, if it was to become part of another development and was to be replatted or something at that point in time, is when that additional conversation could occur. Yeah, just making sure.
And can we provide language in the granting of the waiver that it's specifically for this use for building the road at this time, and or would they need to come for another waiver anyway in the future?
So
They, not the people building the road, but property owners adjacent to it.
So as a property goes through a replat process, that comes to Pflugerville for consideration.
Okay. So we don't need to add any language. It's already going to be addressed through the regular process.
I think that I don't know if I've had a condition on a subdivision waiver in the past.
And I'm confused about that too. Is this a subdivision? I think that's why it was confusing to me, because it reads as a subdivision waiver, but they're building the road. This waiver is for the road, not for the subdivision, right?
So the road, that lot is considered part of the subdivision process. When we go through the subdivision process, which would be the preliminary and the final plat, it sets not only residential lots or commercial lots, but also roadways, easements, and those sort of things as part of that process. So the subdivision ordinance covers the complete development of the property.
Yeah, I guess I'm still confused about what the issue is. If this is to build a road and the north side property doesn't have a structure on it and the south side property hasn't been addressed?
I think that's what was tripping me up as well, because I think the way I read the report was that any of the actual housing units were outside of our even ETJ, which if I'm looking at this map,
Oh, is
They
the
would
south
be,
side on
right?
Williamson County? Is the south side on our in our ETJ?
Yeah.
South side is also in our, okay.
So the lots directly south of where this extension is are part of the city of Pflugerville's ETJ, and they are partially in Williamson, partially in Travis.
Okay, yeah. Asking about Williamson was a bad way to phrase that.
Yeah. But the actual lots for this Bluffs at Blackhawk will be outside of the city of Pflugerville's ETJ, and in Hutto's.
I think it's a very difficult process when you have so many different entities all merged in and we're being asked to play fair with our
Right.
neighbors.
Well, and also, like, not gonna lie, I feel for the applicant because
Yeah.
trying to build in this little corner with all of these different jurisdictions has got to be mind numbing. And but I also feel like I don't feel like I have the information I need at this time to have a strong opinion about it, not knowing more about the South Side plat. But if the applicant has more information about the South Side, then he could come tell us.
I can. Good evening, Matt Tiemann, applicant. So the reason why we need the waiver. This is on silent.
No, that was me.
Okay, sorry. I was like, oof, that's rude. The reason why we need the waiver, guys, is because you're right. You when you end up in multiple jurisdictions, a lot of times you get to design to the highest of every one. So if Pflugerville wants 100 feet of right of way, like great, and then 20 feet landscape easement on your side, that's 140 feet. But now Williamson County wants 120 feet of right of way. So if we add on 20 more feet, now that's 160 feet. The problem is that this land was purchased about, I think, 4 or 5 years ago, and it's purchased in order to line up with existing row lane. So in order to make that alignment work going north, we only have, I think, it says in here I think it's 10 feet on the north side, 10-foot landscape lot on the north side, and on the south side, closer to the houses, Nicholas, it's 18 0.73 to 72 feet. So the landscape lot actually grows larger the further west you go. So, you know, I mean, but practically speaking, I don't want to speak out of turn, but I think it's usually a landscape lot, PUE-DE, right? Usually it's a triple threat lot that can be used to put relocate utilities whenever the road expands. So anyway, that's the reason why. So there's just not enough space to make the alignment work and have a 20-foot landscape lot. So does that answer your? And it's been a joy. But if you guys have any additional questions, happy to answer those.
A follow-up question to what you just said, and I believe you that it has been an absolute pleasure having worked on projects similar in the city of Austin. So the south side that does currently have structures, we're looking at like an 18 feet on the south side where the structures currently are.
Right, 18 feet in Rolling Estates is a deed restricted community, so there was some questions about that. It's deed restricted, and it does require they can't have anything smaller than a 2-acre lot if they subdivide. They also have to have a certain setback from the road. It's like, I don't know what it is from Gate Dancer. I think it's somewhere like 75 feet. So assuming there was enough space and there was enough land in a lot to subdivide it, like let's just say we put in the road, I think very likely somebody comes in and this property owners to the south want to subdivide and like basically sell the back half of their lot. Well, one, they have to have, I think, 2 or 3 acres. What do you guys require in the ETJ for a septic served? I think it's 3 acres.
3 acres for a on-site
Yeah.
septic.
So they have to have at least 5 acres, number one, and then they'd have to make a 3-acre lot. And then additionally, I'm assuming, although not stated in the restrictions, that they'd have to have a specific setback that's at least whatever the minimum would be for that neighborhood. Although it's kind of not a lawyer, but when it's not in the restrictions, but everyone else has to follow it, I'm assuming. So I don't think that you would end up with a house directly abutting the road to the south. Is what I'm saying. I think it would be at least 75 feet off from the property line. I think. I don't know that though.
And I'm not touching deed restrictions with a 10-foot pole.
Yeah, and of course they can always go away. I think they're this particular set, unlike like Row Loop that expired, these do auto renew, and I do know that they do have an active HOA that we have talked to those guys, so they know it's not a secret that they know
Okay.
this is happening.
That's good to know. Thank you. I don't know if I should ask staff or attorney. Do you guys have any insight into? I mean, this seems like a reasonable request. I just want to be sure that future development of housing structures would still have to, like, particularly on the north side, what I'm seeing is on the north side, it's empty land. If the applicant doesn't own that land, if the person who does own that land 5 years from now wants to build on it, since the road will be there and there's not a structure there, when you build on it in the future, just push it 20 feet more than you would have, or 10 feet, whatever would be the right distance from the road. And I think you're saying that that's what you would expect to happen. I'm just wondering, do we need to do anything in our granting of the waiver, if we grant it, to make sure that that's revisited?
I think I'd defer to staff on that.
I think, let me make sure I'm understanding. So I think it sounds like the potential problem we're trying to prevent is we would not want to see, for example, a house 10 feet away from a 100-foot wide set of lanes, right?
And we also don't want
like,
a
if
house
that's our
plopped
stated
down on
goal-
top of utilities and underground cables and whatnot.
So, being in the ETJ, we don't have the authorities to be able to establish where their setbacks are, or establish what their minimum requirements are, how they can place their house. So until that property comes into the city limits, we would have a big challenge on how to implement that. So I think in granting the waiver, we're either okay with the waiver in this instance, or we're not okay with the waiver, and at which point then the applicant would need to go and acquire additional land. The alignment, as he indicated, and you can also see there, it has to align to the west, and also has to align to the east, and has to take in the geometry that's related to that. So those are just some of the additional constraints that they're in.
My inclination is to approve the waiver because I remember the citizens that have been here arguing, are informing us vehemently how bad traffic is here. And so any roadway improvements we can expedite, I think we should.
And they are at least providing as much as they can. And he did actually give us the numbers in the letter as well. Same, that road is hugely important, and I wouldn't want to delay it anymore. I guess I will move to approve.
And I will second.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve item 5A. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, the ayes have it. Item 5A is approved. All right. Sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. So we have four yes, and 1 no. Sorry about that. All right, thank you. And you're staying up next. All right, next up we have item 6A, which is a public hearing. And Kristen, you have a presentation for us for this one as well.
Good evening, Chair and Commission. Tonight we have the Scanel specific use permit. First of all, what is a specific use permit? It is a zoning process by which an applicant can request a specific use not granted by right under the Unified Development Code. The request is reviewed by staff against Chapter 3.8 and compatibility with the comprehensive plan. Then there are 2 public hearings, one at the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, one at the City Council meeting. The Planning and Zoning Commission makes a recommendation to City Council, and City Council has final authority on the request. The Planning and Zoning Commission and/or the City Council may impose conditions to ensure that the land use requests are compatible and harmonious with the surrounding development. The SUP is approved by ordinance. So the applicant is requesting an SUP for industrial uses light and office warehouse on a parcel zoned urban level 4 CL4. The parcel is located south of the current 130 Commerce Park and north of Cameron Road. It was annexed into the city in July of 2007 and rezoned to CL4 in October of 2007. So here we have the parcel outlined in red. The 2 properties identified are recent SUPs that have been approved with conditions in the area for the same uses that the applicant is requesting tonight. The Aspire Pflugerville 2040 Comprehensive Plan calls this area out as an employment land use within the future land use map, and it is located within the East Pecan District. The employment future land use category applies to industrial flex space opportunities in the SH 130 and SH 45 corridor. The uses of industrial uses light and office warehouse are considered appropriate primary uses for the lot. This lot falls within the East Pecan District. This district goes from Desalt Road on the west side to SH 130 on the east side and is located south of SH 130 north of Wells Branch. This area is an economic hub for of employment and has a significant amount of flex industrial and commercial space located within it currently. The property is zoned urban level 4 CL4, and both uses are permitted by SUP. So the applicant has provided a concept plan of how they intend to lay out the site. You'll notice it's 3 shell buildings for which the city has not been told an end user for at this time. There are two large easements that run through the property and dictate how the buildings will be laid out, as the easements do constrain what can be built within those easements. So on the screen are the approval for the criteria approval for an SUP. The proposed uses are similar to previous approved SUPs in the immediate area of the site. The site is being built in such a way to minimize the visual impact of these land uses on the public right-of-way and the county park located to the west. The activities requested are in line with activities associated with the use, and the nature of the use is reasonable. The applicant has provided a 3-foot berm and a buffer yard screening to screen the service court of Building 3 and the service court of Building 1 and 2 face each other, as to minimize that the visual impact of that service court on the public park or the public right-of-way. For this reason, staff is recommending approval of the SUP with conditions. The first two conditions speak to the screening of the service court of buildings 1, 2, and 3. And then the third condition of no outdoor storage is permitted. The applicant has opposed the city including this condition within the conditions for the SUP. But this condition is in line with the previous two SUPs that have been approved recently. So in looking at Building 3, I've outlined the service court area of Building 3. It is located to the side of the rear of the structure. The service court is a vehicular use area associated specifically with the loading docks and or delivery receivable area of multiple buildings or tenant spaces. The applicant has proposed to screen it in accordance with 11.8, and condition 2 speaks to the enhanced screening so that the service court is not visible from SH 130. So for buildings 1 and 2, per chapter 20, the UDC outlines outdoor storage as the storage of products or goods that have a large size, mass, or volume that occurs on site for more than 24 hours, but are not limited to heavy equipment, freight, or commercial vehicles, trailers, construction materials, raw and processed or packaged materials, including products on pallets, in shipping containers, or on crates. The city identified in the red box the service courts between Building 2, the paved area in the yellow box that is between Building 2 and the public right-of-way. The applicant has proposed trailer parking in this area as part of the service court. This area is located between Building 2 and the public right-of-way, and therefore the city does not feel that this is part of the service court. The applicant is able to go through UDC Chapter 3.18 for a public for an administrative interpretation of this part of the code to include this as part of the service court. If it is found to be part of the service court, they would need to screen it in accordance with 11.8, which includes the use of wing walls and 8-foot buffer walls. This concludes the city staff's presentation, but the applicant has prepared a presentation. Once their presentation is done, city staff will be available for questions.
Good evening. My name is Ethan Harwell. I'm a planner with Kinley Horn. With me this evening, we have a few members of our development team, but I would like to point out and introduce Charles Knowlton, who will help me outline the vision for our property this evening and tenants they hope to be able to attract to this facility in Pflugerville. So I want to be very brief this evening. I would like to just add some color to Kristen's presentation. We have some additional renderings of our site to show you. We're very excited to be about a part of what's happening here on Impact Way. Touch on the trailer parking as Kristen described, and then I'll ask Charles to share more about those tenants with you this evening. So as Kristen described, our site sits between two areas of existing and developing industrial development. Our neighbors directly to the south is the East Group site. They have about 1 million square feet of similar buildings and similar uses. And then our direct neighbors to the north is actually the Pflugerville Community Development Corporation. They acquired that property late last year and are actually working on developing it in a manner consistent with our site. So as we have developed this site, we have coordinated that extension of Impact Way with them. We're also coordinating with them on utility extensions down Impact Way. The PCDC site is landlocked until our site comes online. We've also been working with them to address some larger fire flow issues in the area. As Kristen mentioned, our site is laid out to minimize our impact and view from the public roads. Buildings 1 and 2 are oriented so that we can minimize the amount of screening we have, so that we can maximize the amount of plantings and berming we're providing there from Impact Way. And as she mentioned, we have 2 100-foot power transmission line easements bisecting our site. That limits what we can do with Building 3, as well as some topography. The arrangement we've shown here really limits the amount of cut fill we have to do, the amount of retaining walls, and the view of all these areas from adjacent roadways. As Kristen mentioned, and we have worked with staff to kind of codify some of this in those conditions. So our buildings, this is an example of the type of product Skinnell builds, will be facing public rights of way and parks. Our truck courts will be turned interior towards the development. And as the renderings labeled number 1 and number 2 illustrate, we really plan on screening these heavily and ensuring that there's nothing to be viewed from the public right of way. Image 2 is actually looking out towards SH-130. That shows you the level of screening and how tall that screening becomes with the berm. So as Kristen mentioned, trailer parking has been a topic of conversation with us, and I thank Kristen and Nathan for working very patiently with us over the last few months and helping us understand how that's treated here in Pflugerville. We have asked them many, many questions, and they very kindly kept returning our emails. Our trailer parking, as we show it here and in your packet, is only on Building 1. In talking through those conditions and code requirements with Kristen and Nathan, we have opted to remove the proposed trailer parking between Buildings 1 and 2. Trailer parking is a really standard part of the truck court for these types of facilities. Oftentimes these facilities attract users that are doing their own distribution of products, and so we'll take shipments and deliveries. Those trailers, when shipments and deliveries occur, oftentimes sit there for more than 24 hours, putting us in that definition of outdoor storage. It's also very common for these tenants in these facilities to potentially maintain their own fleet of vehicles or trailers for warehousing, distribution, deliveries, services, and those also need a place to go. What we've typically found, what Skinnell has found in their experience building this type of facility all over the world, is that really those Fortune 100 and Fortune 500 type companies who are geared towards being here in Pflugerville and looking for space along the SH-130 corridor need that type of space for their business. And when they don't provide it, we end up with images kind of like we see in that bottom right-hand corner, where things are cluttered around the truck court, which of course becomes unsightly and creates a safety hazard. Ultimately, our goal is to provide that truck and trailer parking on our site in a way that is attractive, hidden from view, and helps facilitate a quality development here in Pflugerville. So we are open to discussing that with you this evening. We thank you for your patience working through this with us. As Kristen mentioned, we are aware that this is not the final step. We would need to be able to get the trailer parking here. There are still some questions about that size exemption and the administrative interpretation that we would have to work through with staff. So, I would like to turn it over just to Charles for just a minute to talk about their vision for the property and potential tenants.
Thanks, Ethan. Good evening. Appreciate the opportunity to be here tonight. My name is Charles Knowlton with Skinnell Properties. Want to just finish off the second half of the presentation and give you guys just a quick kind of couple sentences about who Skinnell Property is, so you have a better understanding of what type of developer is trying to come into the city of Pflugerville. So quickly, Skinnell Properties is a privately held real estate development company based out of Indianapolis. We've got 8 offices throughout the U.S. And 4 offices in Europe. our high fastball, and 95% of our balance sheet is Class A, tilt wall, flex office, distribution, light manufacturing type buildings. We're also active in 46 of the 50 states in the U.S. I'd like to go to the next slide. Displayed here some of the tenants that we have worked with or are currently working with throughout the U.S. We're proud to report that about 60% of our projects are repeat business. So these are the type of tenants that we're looking and actively trying to bring into Pflugerville, and this is the type of caliber tenant we typically work with. With our experience building projects throughout the U.S., we've got a great understanding of what these type of tenants want from a functionality standpoint, from a design standpoint, and with building a 3-building park, we think it's important to have some diversification, and that's specifically talking about building 3, which is more, we're setting it up to more of a deeper building that's more set up to a more pure distribution type tenant. These type of tenants have a higher demand and desire for trailer parking. And so that's evident, as you can see, just north of us with the FedEx building, and north of that with the Amazon facility. And so that's kind of where our thought process is coming from as far as the trailer parking on Building 3. We also understand that aesthetics are very important to the city of Pflugerville. And we're here to accommodate that, or happy to accommodate that with the enhanced landscaping that we've discussed with staff to date. And these last couple slides are just a couple relevant projects that we've built nearby in Texas. This is actually the FedEx facility we developed in 2014, just to the north of our project, or north of the subject project. Here's another FedEx project in Temple, just down the street. We finished that one December of 2022. Here's a project in Haltom City, just north of Fort Worth, called 820 Crossing. We finished July of this year. Here's a Makita Tools build-a-suit we finished in South Dallas in 2016. Here's a speculative project we finished in San Antonio, more of the distribution type setup in San Antonio in 2022. That concludes the presentation. Let us know if you have any questions, and thank you for the time.
So just to clarify one item in that, the SUP tonight is for industrial uses light and office warehouse. The distribution and logistics is considered a different use under our code and would need to be thought about at a separate time. So tonight when we're looking at these, we're just looking at the industrial uses light and the office warehouse. So this concludes staff and applicants' presentation. Just as a reminder, when evaluating this request and making a motion to City Council for a recommendation, the Planning and Zoning Commission is welcome to motion to recommend staff's recommendation. You are also welcome to modify that and add or take away any conditions that that you feel would be appropriate in making that. Once public comment on the item has closed, the applicant and staff will be available for questions.
Great, thank you. And do we have any members of the public wishing to speak this evening? Okay, I will entertain a motion in a second to close the public hearing.
I'll move to close public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, the motion passes. Public hearing is closed.
I have a question. I think for you, Kristen.
Okay.
So the no outdoor storage permitted, is that full stop, or is that unless there's appropriate visual buffer?
So if you include the no outdoor storage permitted, that is a full stop under our code, and there would be no way to gain a variance from that, as it is part of the SUP. If you do not include it, they are limited to 100 square feet or 1% of their primary structure, whichever is smaller, and they would be required to go through a variance process to enlarge that.
And is it also possible to say, to modify that to no outdoor storage permitted except trailers, or is it categorical? Like, is it outdoor storage of all types, including pallets, or could we say, no outdoor storage permitted unless it's trailers with appropriate buffering visually?
So outdoor storage is defined and it gives a,
Yeah, it's got a pretty broad, it's
right.
a
and
pretty,
I think that gives us the understanding of what outdoor storage is, and when we start tailoring it, only accept this.
the more if-ands, the less likely it is to be
It could
compliant,
get
especially in
confusing.
5 years.
Is the intent only to prevent the truck parking on the south part by building 3, or is the intent to prevent truck parking the entire site?
So specifically truck parking in this location, as it is between the right-of-way and building 2. Truck parking as part of a service court would be permitted. Our service court has a defined definition, and it's to be located to the side of the rear and would need to be screened in accordance with 11.8, which would be buffer walls, wing walls. And then there are provisions in there for an administrative determination by the planning director for other screening options.
So if we include the comment as written, no outdoor storage permitted, they would still be able to park between the 2 buildings? Or am I mishearing you?
As part of the service court component, they would be able to park by the loading bays and those sort of things. Yes.
But not in the area to the southeast of
Building 3?
Yeah.
I think building 3 is where we want the trailer park.
Right,
Yeah.
so I think if I'm understanding the applicant correctly, there's essentially not enough the way the buildings are set up, there's not enough other room to have a larger or second truck court to support that third building other than in that location? To the far southeast area of the plot?
Correct. In our early discussions with Kristen and Nathan, we did propose trailer parking here in that yellow rectangle between buildings 1 and 2. However, since then, since being educated about the code and its requirements, we no longer propose trailer parking between building 1 and 2. We only propose the trailer parking adjacent to building 3.
And then that is, the adjacent to building 3 proposal is a truck court?
Considered.
Okay.
It's considered
We'll
a
have
service.
a docks apron truck court
Okay, so
with the higher
it sounds
level
like this
screening.
has been addressed and we can keep in the no outdoor storage, because the not having no outdoor storage worries me since it includes so many things other than trailers.
I guess, yeah, I'm not 100% clear. Is there a conflict still between the staff recommended conditions and what the developer wants? Or are we on the same page?
I think it was our understanding that the parking of trailers would not be permitted as part of the truck court,
Even on building 3.
even on building 3.
And we're here to try to make sure we can park trailers just on building 3.
So there is, okay, so you're saying there is still a
Yes,
disconnect
there
then?
is.
So
Okay.
associated with the service court for building 3, that's the operations where they're permitted to do that with the screening that's been identified inside of the conditions. The area that we were concerned about and where we said no is in the yellow box between buildings 1 and 2.
Okay, so it sounds like it's been addressed in the new proposal.
That's what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, as of this evening, this is
Good work. Teamwork, y'all.
I apologize. I think we're confused. Still confused. It's been directioned to us that we could only permit trailer parking as outdoor storage and not as part of the service court. But it sounds like this evening we can park trailers within the service court
With appropriate screening.
So
with appropriate screening.
right, the service court area is the area where we would identify trucks to be able to move in and out and to have their operations there. Correct. That's accurate. The storage, like a permanent storage of trailers sitting out in front of buildings 1 and 2 was not a permitted option.
I think I think you all are okay with buildings 1 and 2? Is that accurate? The way
Yes, sir.
planned with staff recommendation there. So the question is really, what to do with this edge of the triangle to the southeast of Building 3. So I believe what the applicant y'all are asking for is you're saying, hey, this is going to be a distribution center. We're probably going to have some trailers sitting out there. Is that?
Yes, sir. Correct.
Okay.
Can we
It,
have
w- it will,
trailers
it will
there?
not be a distribution
Well, that-
center under our code. That is a separate land use that's not being contemplated tonight.
Okay.
Great. So we just want to be sure that we can park trailers for longer than 24 hours behind Building 3.
Yes, that is considered part of the service court.
And so with the conditions that were drafted with the staff recommendation, that would allow truck parking in this red box area that we see.
Correct.
And that's what the developer is after.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm
And then you'll have to come back again to talk about an
Further
actual distribution
details.
center, a different use for that building.
Yeah,
Which
distribution
may change the design
logistics-
though, right?
Distribution logistics is a defined land use and is separate than what
Yeah.
was proposed.
different than light warehouse.
I guess I have on a different issue. I have a bit of an issue with landscaping since it wouldn't be mature trees on day one. They showed some of the other
Yeah.
landscaping on existing new buildings, and it's you pretty much see right through it. But I guess it's a pretty well defined way of screening. So, yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm just kind of thinking if there's any other kind of either temporary or actual screening wall options that might be better in the short term.
You
If-
did say, I'm sorry, it's a 3-foot berm on which the landscape is built, true?
Yes.
Okay, so
Okay.
there's at least 3 feet.
Yeah.
And
You
then
do have the ability to add on to the conditions in your recommendation to city council.
And so looks to me like there's one additional parcel south of this, correct? I know it's not part of this, but I'm thinking about future.
So there,
land
there is a
use
partial,
for-
parcel directly south of this, that's the 15,000 Cameron Road. It does have an approved, SUP with the enhanced, landscaping, as screening, that was approved in late 2022.
So we're effectively screening this light industrial use against another light industrial use directly to the south of it, effectively, when these are both built out.
So the screening of this area would be from SH 130, as this is a gateway into our city. It's one of the first lots that you'll see traveling in the city, and one of the last ones you'll see traveling out of the city.
Yeah. It is mostly contraflow. I mean, yes, you can see across the interstate, but I would probably personally feel more strongly if we're talking about the north side of this property. But,
Yeah, just the use of vegetation as a visual buffer, it's
Yeah.
just not going to be there for the first 20 years. But
Yeah.
right.
I mean, it is what it is. We use it in a lot of other places. So.
Yeah. Any further?
I can
thoughts,
make a
questions?
motion.
Yep, I'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve with the staff recommended version, including all of their caveats is not the right word. Recommended conditions.
I'll
And I
second that.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All right, the ayes have it. The motion is approved. Thank you. All right, and with that, we will adjourn the meeting at 8:03. Thank you, everybody.